When the India Today Conclave team asked me to speak about the idea of India, I started thinking about what that meant to me in my lived experience. And my mind actually went back to my childhood. And maybe many of you have had this childhood experience because when I was in school, which was now many years ago, when the summer holidays used to start, which is about this time of year, our parents would bundle us up all in a car and take us to our grandparents' home, where our cousins from all parts of the country would come. And the next couple of months would be spent in these loud, noisy households where parents, children were all busy talking, eating, fighting. And I thought that, to me, that is what India is. That every member of a family was together. They were talking. They all had a voice. And yes, those voices were noisy. But every voice got a space to express itself. And I remember at my grandparents' home in Chandigarh, where we would spend our summer vacations. So you would have different parts of the household where different kinds of voices would emerge. You would have voices of the children who were, of course, complaining against their parents. You would have one segment of one part of the household, maybe the kitchen, one part of the house, where a lot of women of the family would gather. And that would be their opportunity to discuss many of the issues that they faced. And yes, I'm not saying that their voices were equal, but they had a voice and they had a forum to express themselves, to express their concerns. And you see that Indians always have a voice. Indians always have an opinion. You just need to travel in a bus or on a train in India, and you will realize that everyone has an opinion about everything. And in fact, a train journey done in India, as compared to a train journey done in any other part of the world, is a starkly different experience. So when you sit in an Indian sleeper train where you have 3 people sitting on one side, 3 people sitting on another, the entire time that you spend in that train, you may not know those people when you actually get on that train. But by the time you finish that journey, you know their political opinions, you know their social opinions, you know about their children, you know about their grandchildren, you know where they want to get them admitted, you know everything about them. When elections come, you go to any chai ki dukaan, you go to any street corner, everybody has a voice. And I think that really, for me, defines what India is, where everyone has a voice, everyone has an opinion, and everyone in some forum or the other gets an opportunity to express their opinions. But I think that it is time that as Indians now, we need to start thinking about our voice and raising our voice about the many, many challenges that face our country. The central government minister, Smriti Irani ji, was here in this session. And she talked about how India is on the path to economic growth, how India is becoming an economic superpower. Unfortunately, she is not here anymore, but while on the one hand we talk about a growing Indian economy, there are many, many worrying similar data points that global indexes throw at us. While India may be growing as a global economy, today, in the Human Development Index, which measures education, healthcare, equality, access, you have India year on year falling in its global position. In the last global HDI, the Human Development Index that came, India ranked 132 out of 191 countries in the globe. Most of our neighbors, whom we decry for their policies, for their politics, are ranked above India in the Global Development Index. Today, we pick up the newspaper, and every few weeks, you find one story or the other, be it in the newspaper, be it in the news, be it on YouTube channels, about lack of access to healthcare. Just a few months ago, I remember seeing a news story about how in Madhya Pradesh, one man carried his wife for 65 kilometers just so that she could access basic healthcare. And this is not a one-off story. You see this in all parts of the country. where access to healthcare and access to high-quality healthcare is a very serious lacuna. Today, India has only 6 ICU beds for every 1 lakh people, only 136 hospital beds for every 1,000 people. This is where the Indian voice needs to be heard. This is where the Indian voice needs to be raised. This is what we all need to be talking about. Similarly, education. We all know how important education is to us, for our families. Every time in any household, children's exams comes, I have a niece who's in class 9, and we have a WhatsApp group that I think almost exists solely to discuss her maths assignments and her maths exams. So for every individual, for every household, their children's education, their children's future is one of the most important things. And yet, lakhs and lakhs of children across the country do not have access to basic, high-quality education. Every year in January, an organization called Pratham presents the Asar survey report. And year on year, that report tells us that more than 50% of children, school-going children, do not know how to read and write. Even, in fact, in the Human Index, the Human Development Index, in 2020, it said that Indians, on an average, have 12.2 years of education. By 2022, that has fallen to 11.8 years of education. This is where, as Indians, we need to raise our voice. Another news story that we often hear is that when state governments bring out advertisements for PNs, for postmasters that require 5th standard, 8th standard qualifications, you have 100 positions that come out, and you have 20,000 people who apply. People who have PhDs, people who have master's degrees, people who have MTechs. And they don't have jobs. Today, from January to April, 4.8 crore Indians are unemployed. 28.26% of Indian youth do not have jobs. So as a country, these are issues that we need to be talking about. These are issues about which we need to be loud. These are issues about which we need to be noisy. Then how is it that one wonders that on the one hand, India has talked about becoming a major superpower, or on the other hand, you have such stark indices as far as education, healthcare, employment, malnourishment goes? And I think that the recent Hindenburg report answers a lot of those questions. And that is, again, something Indians need to raise their voice about. Why is it that inequality is rising in this country? It is because some people are more favored than others. You see the fact that you have some business groups close to ruling parties in power whose net worth goes up from 2014.7.3 billion to 2022 to $140 billion. You see the fact that on the one hand, we have a country that talks about cracking down on corruption. But yet, when the Adani Group gets investments from 6 shell companies registered on the same address for 42,000 crore rupees, there is no investigation that happens on the matter. You have the LIC that loses 50,000 crores in 50 days, and yet no investigation happens on the matter. This is what Indians need to be loud and noisy about, ask questions, raise our voices, bring the central government on the discussion table to say that if we are talking about rooting out corruption, if we are talking about India being a global superpower, then we will investigate this kind of corruption that has been brought to the fore. And it is this voice of India that today is under attack. Today, anyone who wishes to criticize the government, anyone who wishes to raise their voice against the central ruling party is clamped down upon. I, as a political leader, I, as an opposition leader, have lost track of the number of defamation cases filed against me by BJP leaders for raising my voice. And today, it's not just about defamation cases. Today, every agency of the central government is being used to clamp down upon the opposition. Be it the CBI, be it the Enforcement Directorate, be it the Income Tax Department, be it police across the country. In fact, a few months ago, I was making a list of the number of cases against leaders of Aam Aadmi Party. And we are not a very old party, we are a new party. And from 2015, since the Aam Aadmi Party came to power, we have more than, I think at last count, we had 186 cases registered against Aam Aadmi Party leaders. No conviction in one single case. No corruption proved in one single case. But yet, every agency continues to attack Aam Aadmi Party and all other opposition parties. Not for the so-called corruption that any parties have done. Because, of course, in all these cases, there is not even 1% or 0.1% of conviction that happens. But today, agencies of the central government are threatening the voices that are raised against them. And I believe that at the very core is a challenge to the idea of India. Because in India, in our country, in every street, in every household, in every bogie of every train, at every chaiwala, every Indian has a right to a voice, and every Indian has a right to voice their opinion. And this right must be protected. Thank you.
Atishi, if there could be a political manifestation of New India, it would be the Aam Aadmi Party. There would be no Aam Aadmi Party in old India. You're at the moment, if we call the India moment, the political moment of it all, because you are a creation of New India. You realize that.
No, absolutely. And I think that India, in many ways, both India old and new, I think the biggest strength of this country has been the diversity of voices that exist here. I think that the biggest strength of this country is, and I'm sure that as we look across this room and we were to see the people sitting here, just in terms of life experiences, just in terms of cultural experiences, just in terms of opinions, in terms of the languages that we speak, I think that diversity is really the biggest strength of this country. And I think that Aam Aadmi Party represents an important voice in this. And I think Aam Aadmi Party represents an important voice in this because, and this is in some ways why I feel we are an important representative of New India, is that politics was considered the preserve of a few. And I remember that when we first came into politics, a lot of our friends and well-wishers used to sometimes laugh at us and say, "Tum log karoge politics. Tumhare paas na paisa hai, tumhare paas na muscle power hai. तुम ऐसे पढ़े लिखे लोग, ऐसे लोग politics में last नहीं करते हैं." But it is in this country where people like us, and I talk about myself, I don't come from a political family, I don't come from a wealthy family, I come from a very Indian middle-class family. And I think the fact that I am where I am today, that without any political background, wealth, political connections, today I'm an elected legislator, I'm a minister in an elected government. I think that this would not have been possible with any other political party.
You're a creation, your party is a creation of New India, but the problem with New India is it gets bored very quickly, it moves on, and it reads very quickly on, on what's on the table. Where does the Aam Aadmi Party now stand in ideology? You've delivered that speech where you've talked about what's wrong with the BJP, but what is it that's right with the Aam Aadmi Party? You came with the promise of anti-corruption. You're facing the worst blowback on that now. What are you taking to the people that New India believes you and gives you a new story to narrate?
I think the story of New India is that India has to be for everyone. And everyone, irrespective of the family that you're born in, has to get an equal opportunity in this country. A few months ago, a friend of mine shared an incident with me where his father was hospitalized. And he lives in Bangalore. And he was sitting outside the ICU. And while waiting for the doctor to come and share what his father's medical report was. And there was 3 members of a family who was from rural Karnataka, who were sitting on the benches next to him. So the father of the family, the head of the family, was hospitalized. His wife, maybe around 60 years old, his daughter and his son-in-law, the three of them were there. And they were discussing whether the last asset of their family, one piece of land in their village, should be sold off or mortgaged to afford the treatment that the gentleman inside the ICU needed to have. And there was an argument going on between the three members of the family, where his wife was saying, कि नहीं, मुझे तो सब कुछ करना है. And her daughter and son-in-law were very patiently trying to explain to her कि पापा शायद बचेंगे वैसे भी नहीं. तो इसलिए आप अपनी ज़मीन तो मत बेचो, वरना आप उसके बाद क्या करोगे? But I think anyone who is sitting here would agree that no human being, no citizen of this great country of ours should ever have to make such a choice. And I think that really is what Aam Aadmi Party represents. That really is what Aam Aadmi Party is trying to do, is that every individual, irrespective of their place of birth, needs to have equal access, equal opportunity. You know how they say, India में कहते हैं ना कि हमारा भाग्य हमारी हाथ की लकीरों में लिखा होता है. And I sometimes feel that it's actually true. Because when you look at the future, how the future pans out for different segments in society, if I come from a well-off family and my parents can pay the fees of an expensive private school, then chances are that I'm going to do well in my school education, get admitted into a college of my choice, and get a high 6-figure, 7-figure salary by the time I'm done with my education. But on the other hand, if my parents do not have the ability to pay that fees, and I have to go to a broken-down, ramshackle government school, chances are that I wouldn't even be able to complete my school education. Even if I do, I will, in all likelihood, end up becoming a mechanic in a car store or domestic help in someone's house. I'm not saying that there is anything wrong in being a car mechanic or in being a domestic worker. The problem is that there is no choice. And at the age of 3, most children in this country have that choice made for them just because of the families they're born in.
Atishi, I'm going to ask you one last question. Now, that's been, I would reckon, the administrative journey of the Aam Aadmi Party. What would you say to those who call you ideologically corrupt? Because where does the Aam Aadmi Party stand on everything, on what you criticize the BJP or the Congress?
I think our ideology and our party's, Delhi's chief minister, party's leader, Mr. Arvind Kejriwal, has defined it several times in 3 phrases. Number 1, हम कट्टर ईमानदार हैं. Number 2, हम मानवता के लिए काम करते हैं. So I feel that this कट्टर ईमानदारी, कट्टर देशभक्ति, and मानवता are 3 things that define us. Because we are really looking to work towards every citizen of this country. You might call it an administrative journey when we talk about education and healthcare. But remember, Preeti, that we are all probably coming from privileged backgrounds where we have never had to make this choice. That can I get my mother treatment, or do I have to think about that last asset of my family, of that flat, of that jewelry? And I think that for every citizen of this country, these really are the most important challenges that they face. What is going to be the future of their children? What is going to be the future of their families? And I think Aam Aadmi Party is here to address those.
All right, appreciate you joining us, Atishi. Thank you.